Hello everyone. A warm welcome to you all. It is complete pleasure for us at Propel Guru to have you all on board for an amazing webinar. It will be just few minutes before we get started. Today's speaker panel includes Greg Stoller and Ajay Dubedi. And now comes your webinar host.
Greg, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience? You have been into operations, finance, business development, and now you are a lecturer at prestigious Boston University. So tell us, how did you start your journey?
Well, good morning or good evening, everybody. I know we have people literally from all over the world dialed into today's webinar. So first of all, thank you. Second of all, let me first preface my comments by saying I hope that everyone who is either watching or listening is safe and in good health. These are certainly unique times, to say the least. But to answer your question, I started my journey after I graduated from college, where I was a finance major and a Japanese minor. I was fortunate enough to be the first American ever hired full-time at the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo. I worked there for several years, came back to the United States, received my MBA, worked for a couple of different startups, and then approximately 20 years ago, founded my own company, which I'm continuing to run today. And also 20 years ago, I wanted to give something back. So I tried my hand at teaching, and I'm pleased to say that I'm now in my 21st consecutive year teaching, my 6th year at the Boston University Questrom School of Business, loving every minute of it, and very fortunate that even during 08, 09, and 2010's monster recession and meltdown, and now during COVID, my company fortunately is alive and well.
Great. That's really nice to know about you. Ajay, would you like to introduce yourself and your organization, Propel Guru, to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining in. So a warm welcome to all, and thank you, Prachi, for bringing me on board for this particular amazing webinar along with Greg. So Propel Guru is a creative digital marketing company that is dedicated to creating memorable and enriching digital experience. At Propel Guru, we provide ingenious and innovative sales and lead generation, email marketing, graphical content, digital marketing solution to small, medium, large, and Fortune 500 companies. I myself am a CRM expert and a marketing expert. So we do this by guiding them to leverage innovative capabilities and technologies effortlessly. Our team ensures that the products, services, technologies, and functionalities don't become redundant or inaccessible or too sophisticated at times, which do happen. So they never have to look forward for alternatives or to meet their requirements. So, yep, that's what we do.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you for the introduction. Greg, back to Greg. How do you see the pandemic changing the industry in the long term?
Right now, I really think, and I want to echo what Ajay said a few minutes ago, is that some of the best solutions in business, A, they don't have to be pulled directly from a textbook, and B, they don't have to have 17,000 moving parts, etc. Some of them just are elegant in their simplicity. For me, I'm recommending right now a back to basics business strategy. And although that sounds terribly simplistic, it really is nothing more complicated than providing existing and new customers with outstanding value. And for me, that's the way that we can get through this pandemic. I got through it personally in the dot-com crash of 2000. I mentioned a few moments ago, 08, 09, and 2010. Now, of course, we're dealing 10 years later with a global pandemic, but I think the business metrics have not changed. Everybody wants to make money. Everyone wants to operate profitably. But the fact of the matter is, now more than ever, you really have to concentrate on taking care of your customers, doing new deals if they present themselves, but ultimately over-exceeding, almost under-promising and over-delivering to your customers.
Great. That's quite true about the industry and pandemic that you have mentioned. Ajay, how do you see COVID-19 impacting business across the world? Also, how do you at Propel Guru ensure things are always at the right place?
So COVID has been nothing short of a tragedy, and yes, it's a disaster. So the virus has claimed lives and crumbled businesses and economies across the globe. Amazingly, it's difficult to realize that it's September 2020 and we are still talking about this. And also, like with me and Greg talking about, I might be talking more about the negative part, and Greg will be talking probably more towards and on an optimistic level, like how we can move it through. So obviously there will be a bit of difference, but amazingly it's difficult to realize this about that we are still talking about it, and probably we are soon will try to go over it. Many reports suggest that 50% of the working class is still depressed. I would say it's not a surprise at all. Yes, many people are depressed due to this. And when the COVID-19 crisis started, it was critical for us as Propel Guru as a company to keep up the offering continued services to our clients and ensure our major projects and mergers were all in line. I can see several marketing sales funds reduced to half, or especially businesses of tourism, offshore studies, aerospace diminished to almost zero. And on the other hand, to be very true, we also have some silver linings as well. Especially in Propel Guru, we were able to get some businesses related to healthcare domain, some surprisingly from real estate domain, and few more with basically fundings from government or other institutes. So that's also have saved us or given us some hope. So I would say a swift action, good morals, and proactive and compassionate leadership within our team with an unwavering focus on our goals is helping us to stay afloat. Yes, this has been a fight to stay afloat from March until August. So I'm delighted to say that we are able to quickly adapt within a short period of time without skipping a beat. So that's how we are.
Thank you, Ajay. Greg, only a few months back, the market touched on all-time high, and then we saw the biggest drop in the last 10-20 years. Now everybody is wondering, as far as the markets are concerned, is the worst behind us? Or is it still more painful that you expect that is coming into the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. It really depends on whether you are a glass half full or a glass half empty sort of person. And I again want to echo, by the way, before I forget, thank you to Propel Guru for the opportunity to do this. I personally have always tried to be a glass half full person. I can't ignore what Ajay was saying, whether it's marketing budgets or just the world around us. I mean, it's horrible. People are dying. People are getting sick. I too never, in my worst sensitivity analyses, assumed that we'd still be in the middle of this, let alone talking about it 6 months later. The one positive anomaly that the pandemic has not affected has been the U.S. financial markets. Obviously we went through a correction a few months ago, but at least over the past 6 months, they've held their own. Now, let's also call it what it is, that the U.S. financial markets are affected by worldwide events. We have an EU recovery deal, which is in the midst. Nobody really knows if that's going to work or not. Prime Minister Abe, unfortunately, had to retire. A new prime minister in Japan has been named, and obviously, we don't know what's going to happen there. There are some open questions about Sino-U.S. relations, which for me personally, I wish could revert to normal. And of course, you've got the U.S. presidential election in November. So I think that all told, as of right now, mid-September, I'd like to believe the worst is behind us. And thank goodness that the markets have held their own. But who knows what's going to happen in the next 3 days, let alone the next 3 weeks.
Okay, Ajay, how is your organization's approach different from that of the other digital marketing lead generation companies?
Yeah, so each one of us at Propel Guru is inspired by an untraditional approach to digital marketing. I would say like we eat, sleep, drink, we do digital marketing all the time. We marketize ourselves, we marketize our ideas, and many other things. And in process, we definitely do lead generation and do a sort of a good approach towards generating that pipeline. And innovation is what differentiates us during these challenging times. We also got the opportunity to restrain ourselves. I believe that sales and marketing business goes like a war or almost like a boxing match. Okay, so at times it's important to refuel and re-energize yourself, take a break between rounds, and that's what has happened. Basically, almost 30-40% of our time period, like time duration, in last 4 months, we tried to train ourselves with various strategies like LinkedIn strategies, redesigning the pipeline, enterprise approach, and in fact, redesigning the entire account mining approach right from scratch. So we have done a lot from training ourselves and making sure that we are able to reach to that particular level where we were always thinking to reach because we were so busy, we were not able to do that. So that's sort of the approach which was different.
Okay, moving back to Greg. Greg, today's businesses are facing unprecedented challenges and that try and fulfill consumer demand in a vastly changed environment. What should be the guiding path in your view?
Right now, I think the name of the game is productivity. Again, I try and call them as I see them. Revenue is down, margins are thin, and because the stock market, the US stock market, has been comparatively strong, prices are not going down or the rate of increase hasn't changed. Yes, we don't have a lot of inflation, but the fact of the matter is nothing is really cheap right now. It's as expensive as it was pre-COVID. My advice, at least for the short term, is focus on productivity. Retool your strategies, retool your implementation, try and get the most that you can ethically, optimistically out of your employees without losing your employees, and try and just be productive. I think if you stay productive, that eventually profits will start to come back. Because remember, there are two ways of making money. Either increasing revenue, which is hard to do right now, or reducing expenses, obviously also hard to do right now. But if you can operate profitably, you actually are going to at least eke out a little bit more effective profitability.
Okay, so would you like to enlighten our audience about how to manage the financials and how to go about it regarding managing in this pandemic situation?
So you mean the 10 summary points that we are talking about?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So I think that, and again, I want to be clear that in order to be successful, even right now, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And you don't need to be the person who comes up with Facebook or Microsoft, in the sense that a back to basics strategy is just that. So my first point is don't panic and resist the urge to be impulsive. And by the way, this is really, really hard to do, present company included. Many nights I've laid awake at night trying to will away in my mind COVID-19. Figuring that if we all sort of try hard to think that this is going to go away, it's going to go away. It's not. Then I would lay awake other nights playing a duck and cover, routine that I just wanted to put my head under the covers and hope that if I didn't think about it, it's going to go away. It's not going to go away that way either. It's just, hopefully a vaccine will be developed and fast, but until that happens, it's going to be a while. So my first recommendation is don't panic. Just try and weather the storm, and certainly don't translate panic into making impulsive decisions. My second recommendation of the 10 is protect cash balances and protect your revenue streams. This is a very good time to go through contracts and make sure you're getting paid everything that you're owed, and make sure that you understand who's paying you, what the cash flow cycle looks like, what's liquid, what is illiquid, and just making sure that you understand how much cash you have on your balance sheet. There has never been a more important time in business history when cash right now is king or queen. Having cash on your balance sheet, now somebody could say, well, given how well the US financial markets are going, you should be investing that cash. That cash sitting there is actually moving backwards, and I respect that. But my point is, if you can put it into, easily liquidatable or marketable securities, no problem. But now is the time to have more cash, not necessarily put it into illiquid assets, etc. My third recommendation is revise or revisit or pivot even age-old business strategies. Nothing is sacrosanct anymore. That has been my big lesson and my big takeaway from the pandemic over the past 6 months. Now, I don't think you need to make change for change's sake. If things are going well, if you're able to survive, if you're able to protect your cash balances and your revenue streams and control your costs, there's no reason to make a change just for the sake of making changes. But if things aren't going well, just because you've never done something, or just because you haven't done a strategic or business review, doesn't mean that it's set in stone and you can't make it. Now is the time to do it, etc. In that same vein, my fourth recommendation is take a much longer term business strategy and redefine and recalibrate how you'll define success. Again, let's face it, Ajay said it, I've said it, none of us expected this was going to take 6 months. In our worst possible scenarios, none of us expected it was going to be around for 6 months. And by the way, it is, and unfortunately, it's not going away anytime soon. So instead of saying, the fourth quarter of 2020 is coming, if you're on a calendar year, fiscal year, now start focusing on the first or second quarter of 2021. Just make sure that you change your lens and redefine how you will say, I've been successful. Fifth recommendation is, in that same vein, accept lower profitability, accept lower return on investments, and don't beat yourself up because of it. I'm the first to admit that cash on your balance sheet that isn't invested is returning zero. I get it. You're not going to get a great ROI, return on investment from that. But if you can stay relevant, if you can stay alive and stay in business, I will take lower returns and lower profitability in exchange for not being able to, stay in business or having to declare bankruptcy or sell at fire sale prices, etc. My sixth recommendation is consider the impacts of COVID across the board on implementation, marketing messages, and feasibility of getting stuff done. The good news is, if you want to call it that, is that unemployment in the United States is unnaturally high right now. We went from being unnaturally low to obviously unnaturally way too high. There are people out there who are looking and available to be hired. Obviously, you would hope to pay them more than they're receiving on unemployment, but my point is that there are a lot of people you can choose from. That's good. The bad news is there aren't a lot of customers right now who necessarily want to buy. So yes, you can shore up your balance sheet, you can shore up your income statement, you could hire people, but the implementation might take longer. You might need to change marketing messages. Disney, everyone loves Disney and everyone loves the Disney parks. I recently saw a commercial where everybody in the commercial was wearing masks. You would just never expect to see that from a Disney commercial. Again, a lot of the consumer products companies are now openly discussing COVID as part of their marketing plans, etc. That's not taboo. That's realizing and recognizing the hand you've been dealt and trying to take it from there, etc. My seventh of 10 recommendations is someone who I used to work for several years ago used to tell me that the two most important words in business are thank you. And by the way, they are translatable into any language. Now is a very, very good time to not only keep the lines of communication with your customers open, but also call them and just plain say, thank you for being my customer. Thank you for working with me. Thank you especially for staying with me right now. That in itself might not only save revenue, it might generate revenue. Because remember, people need to be innovative right now. Just because we're in the middle of a pandemic doesn't mean that you've stopped being innovative. And why not upsell your existing customers or retool strategies with an existing customer? But the only way to do that is actually to get them on the phone or on a Zoom call and first say thank you and then say, what can we do for you, etc. The eighth recommendation is to be aggressive with scenario planning and sensitivity analysis to reduce unexpected surprises. I've said it twice today. I'll say it a third time. Ajay said it. Nobody expected that from March, when this whole thing started, that we'd still be talking about it, let alone live through it 6 months later. What are you going to do? So if it's here and it's not going away, you need to come up with different scenarios and different sensitivity analyses. I can tell you, and Ajay can tell you, no individual decision or business metric exists in a vacuum. If metric A changes, something's going to happen with metrics B, C, and D. If metric A changes, it's going to affect something in your business. So long gone, and I'm talking like late 80s, early 90s, is base case, best case, and worst case, where you had three discrete numbers and you were trying to, figure out financial forecasting, etc. Now everybody is into sensitivity analyses, or should be, scenario planning, making sure that you say, if A, B, and C happen, what's going to be the result? If A, B, and C happen 50% of how much we expected them to happen, what's going to be the result, etc. Number 9 of 10 is, this is a very good time, as much as this might sound like heresy, to reinvest in your business. Unfortunately, just because we're in a pandemic doesn't mean that technology obsolescence has been put on hold. That doesn't mean that assets, property, plant, and equipment isn't aging. And that doesn't mean that labor isn't going to retire. Eventually, we will recover. Obviously, we hope it's sooner rather than later, but eventually we will recover. You don't want 3, 4, 5 months from now to have recovered and then realize that you're behind the proverbial 8 ball because your own technology has gotten obsolete. You haven't been thoughtfully reinvesting. And again, I know that's somewhat contrary, I should say, to what I said earlier, which is to preserve cash balances, but you have to reinvest. I'm sure if I asked him, Ajay will tell me that the strategies that Propel Guru was using for digital marketing a year ago are probably now completely gone and have to be reconfigured because new technologies have developed, old technologies have been put to bed, and the world is just changing at a lightning fast pace, etc. My 10th and final point is, don't be afraid to ask your lenders or your customers that you are borrowing money from to refinance. The worst they can say is no. They can simply say, I'm sorry, I'm getting hurt just as much as you are right now, and I can't help you. But if you don't ask, you're not going to get. And as I said earlier, the US right now has a hugely beneficial adjustment that interest rates are essentially down to zero. And I know that the Federal Reserve Bank is meeting this week. I don't see them changing that anytime. So it's a very good time to be borrowing money. It's a very good time to be refinancing your existing loans or asset purchase agreements or leases or stuff of that ilk. This is the time that you can ask. Again, not everybody's going to say yes, but it certainly doesn't hurt to initiate those conversations. So in conclusion, don't panic. Protect your cash balances. Revise or revisit or pivot even what you've been doing for years. Take a much longer term planning perspective. Stay in business, stay relevant, but don't beat yourself up for lower than expected returns. Consider the impact of COVID on implementation and also your marketing messages. Say thank you to your customers. Contact them, say thank you, see if you're giving them everything they need. Be aggressive with scenario planning and sensitivity analysis. Use this downtime to reinvest in your business, especially technologically, and refinance any existing loans that you can to take advantage of lower US interest rates. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Ajay, would you like to add something to it?
I would say, Greg, that was amazing. In fact, you covered up end to end. It was really amazing, how you were able to explain things which we should be doing. And many of those points, I would say, pretty happily, I would say that, yes, those are some of my advice as well, because see, this is a difficult time, okay? And the world has never been so easy, okay? If you are down on this planet Earth, you will have to survive, you will have to fight, you will have to come up, right? So many great words and great things. So yeah, obviously, like some of my closing statement would be like, I would like to say that find opportunity, even if the times are difficult, right? Which we are also trying to do. And to be very true, we got some really good opportunities who wanted to revive their process, their business strategies, and we are helping them out along with helping us ourselves. Okay, so good time to take one step back. That is also what exactly Greg has also mentioned, and try to reanalyze, re-strategize, try to see and connect with your existing clients, which is upsell, which is an art, especially if you care about your clients. Okay, so this is the time to try to do not aggressive upselling, but try to share like, okay, what new ideas or innovative ideas you have. And I would like every day, every morning, I get up and say those 4 words to myself. Like what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk, I'm going to communicate with my clients, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to participate. At times when we are busy, we don't listen or we don't participate much, but now, yes, I would say like I'm going to participate more and I'm going to listen more.
Great. Thank you, Ajay. Now we'll move towards our Q&A round. The first question that we had, you guys have already answered. This was all the webinar was about, the company, the startup, how an individual will deal with the tension and everything. So that's the answer to the question. Surprisingly, we have some social media questions. We are tracking how questions are being asked on social media. So we have few questions. First question, I believe governments across the world need to pump millions of dollars in the market, especially to help small businesses, but they have to not still done well enough. What are your views? So should I repeat the question again?
Yes. Did you say governments? I didn't hear you.
Okay. I believe governments across the world need to pump millions of dollars in the market, especially to help small businesses.
Yeah.
But they have not still done well enough. What are your views?
Yeah. Okay. So it's Ajay. Do you want to take that first? Do you want me to take it? How would you like to proceed?
I want you to take it first. I want to take it.
So it's interesting because the European model of this has been to provide money to the companies so that the companies wouldn't have to lay off employees. The US version of this, through the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, has been to give the money to the employees directly, or some combination thereof. You know, the PPP is going to provide money so the companies don't have to lay people off. The European model is going to be slightly different, but the fact of the matter is, one way or another, employees are able to keep their jobs, right? I don't think that this is a time to worry about ruining the balance sheet of a government. And I get the fact that there are capital accounts and current accounts and stuff of that ilk. This is the time that any government across the world, I don't care whether it's a small country, a large country, I don't care whether it's part of a bloc, like part of the European Union or Benelux region. I mean, we could go through any of these associations, OPEC or stuff of that ilk. The government has to protect the citizens. Because at the end of the day, if there's not enough business to support employment, and you have, I don't know, think about what's happening in Spain, even pre-pandemic, you've got 20, 30, 40% unemployment, people can't survive. You just can't survive. So I think I agree with the person who asked the question. Have the governments so far done a good job? Yes, I think they've done whatever they can do. I think there is still a lot more work to be done. Again, I'm talking about this apolitically. In my classes at the Boston University Questrom School of Business, I never talk about religion or politics. I think it's inappropriate. It's just not what I teach. I teach business. But the fact of the matter is that outside of a U.S. presidential election, outside of whether you're capitalist or communist or, pick whatever you want across the way, this is the time to protect your citizens and don't worry about the future. Eventually, we hope, fingers and toes crossed, that there will be enough tax receipts that the government can start paying down this debt.
Ajay, what's your take on this?
Yeah, in fact, I would also like to start with, I generally don't talk about politics or things like that. But yeah, what I would say is like, see, this is a global thing, okay? Everyone is aware of it. It's not that a government or a big institute is not aware of what's going on. So everyone is trying to protect themselves. By themselves, they are trying to protect their citizens, and they're trying whatever is possible, whatever is best for their citizens. Okay. And as far as this economy thing goes, it's not as simple as it looks. Okay. You can ask thousands of questions, but to actually go ahead and try to analyze and find out the right solution, I think I would try to summarize everything in one sentence, because I can keep talking about this, but it's like, it's time to save lives rather than save money. So yeah, that's
well put, well said.
Okay, so next question. Do you think coronavirus will lead to a new age of environmental behaviors?
Yep, good question. I am going to come out swinging and say that we will eventually get back to normal, but I don't think it's going to be 100% or 0%. I don't think that when we get back to normal, nobody's ever going to do a Zoom conversation ever again. I don't think when we get back to normal that nobody's going to want to wear this ever again. I think it's probably going to be some variation of a theme. I do think that the environment is something that we will have to protect. Again, I'm not qualified to speak on global warming. I'm not qualified to speak on what's the horrible things that are happening on the west coast of the United States with the forest fires and everything else in California and Oregon, etc. But what I can tell you is that as much as I hate wearing this, and I'm sure I speak for a lot of people on this webinar, that walking around like this is just no fun all day, it is saving lives. And my wife is a geriatric clinical nurse specialist. She's been working in hospitals her entire career, and she has said to me, just as Ajay put it, it is time to save lives. And this is real. This is not a cut on your finger that you've forgotten to put Neosporin on or bacitracin, and it might hurt for an additional couple of weeks, but eventually it's gonna get better. This is the real deal. So do I think it's going to have, you're going to get a lightning strike, a thunderclap, and all of a sudden we're going to do a complete 180 and change our environmental behavior because of COVID-19 in 2020? No, but I think there are going to be a lot of positive lessons that people take out from this.
Ajay, anything to add to it?
No, I think George is doing really amazing. Like Greg is doing really amazing things. Like what he's explaining, I'm just able to listen to them.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to next question. What can small businesses do to reach out to more customers?
Yeah, good question. I think what small businesses can do are try and experiment and do whatever you can. And again, I get the fact that everybody is resource constrained. And I also get the fact that most businesses' largest resource constraint is human resources. Like there just aren't enough people to get everything done. Again, you can only get productivity to 100%, right? You can't go above 100%. It's mathematically impossible. But I would say that instead of saying, oh, we're not going to try that. We tried that, 6 months ago. And again, I'm not saying pre-COVID. We tried that last year and it didn't work. Or we, experimented with doing this and it didn't work. Try it again. It doesn't cost anything to send out an email. It doesn't cost anything to, focus on the digital marketing strategies that Propel Guru is doing. I mean, just as a quick aside here, I'm fortunately asked to do, speaking engagements like this all the time. I'm happy to do them, regardless of whether I'm getting paid or not. And, companies are pretty clever using LinkedIn or stuff of that ilk. I have been truly blown away of how Propel Guru has marketed this webinar. I mean, it easily has been 3.5 weeks ago. And, again, I'm not an investor in Propel Guru. I'm not receiving any actual or in-kind compensation from doing this. So I've got no horse in the race, but they have been downright creative as heck getting the word out. And my guess is they've done it pretty cost effectively. So if they can do it, especially in the middle of COVID, and get the literally thousands or 1,000 plus people to register and sign on to this thing, you could do it too, even as a small business.
Great. So next question from our platform. Can a coronavirus pandemic trigger a global economic crisis in 2020 and beyond?
I think the answer to that is yes. Unfortunately, we're in the middle of one. I think, you know, when I was growing up, my father used to tell me that there are two things you can depend on in life: death and taxes. And no matter what, those are the two things that you can depend on in life. And as much as we laugh about it, it's true, right? I think we all, at least I'm just talking for me, took it for granted that a year ago, things were going pretty darn well. I'm not going to say that anyone was on cruise control, and I'm never going to say that we've gotten it right. But if you look at the US, things were going pretty darn well. Interest rates were low. Unemployment was at historic lows. The stock market was doing well. People were happy, they were healthy, and they were employed. And basically, if you provided value to customers, they were going to take you up on that, and then they were going to pay their bills. And as long as you get paid, you could pay your own bills, etc. This has been a sobering reminder over the last 6 months that nothing in life outside of death or taxes is guaranteed. This is really scary. So yeah, we're in the middle of a global financial crisis. China, if they buy a lot from the United States, is going to have a problem if the United States can't afford to buy. If country A is exporting to country B and country B can't pay its bills, then country A is not going to get paid. So yeah, I mean, I think it's scary. I think this is unlike anything we've ever seen because we understand boom and bust cycles. You know, looking back to the Great Depression in the 20s in the United States, we get that every economy across the world goes in its requisite 8 to 10 year boom and bust cycles. We just expect it, right? What's going on for the past 6 months? This is not a bust cycle. This is a disaster. So eventually it's going to bottom out. But the fact of the matter is it's happening. And as I said, as much as it sounds crazy, oh my God, I'm a featured speaker at a webinar. My great piece of advice is focus on survival, stay in business. Wow, that's going to be, printed on the front page of Harvard Business Review. Not. The fact of the matter is it's true. If you have to be able to stay alive right now in order to get to the other side.
Ajay, would you like to add how pandemic triggers the global economic crisis in 2020?
Yeah, it's a disaster, and as well, very well explained already. Try to stay afloat. That's what we are doing. We are not drowning.
We're all doing that.
Yeah, and the end of the tunnel is pretty soon there. We'll be able to cross it out. So yeah.
Okay, so there are a lot of questions, but we're going to take this last question. The Small Business Administration launched PPP, Paycheck Protection Program Loans, a few months back. Have they helped US businesses really?
I think they have. I think that everybody assumed, and I don't think this was a fallacious assumption, I think everyone assumed two things. One is that when it was instituted, it was going to help businesses, and then the economy was going to recover. That was the second sort of assumption. The problem is that it helped, but it wasn't permanent. And the second problem is that it hasn't gotten any better. And, every government only has so much money available. So you can't just keep printing unlimited amounts of money. I mean, again, you can, and they have been, but eventually that's going to come to a halt because you're going to permanently, destroy an economy. So do I think in the April and May timeframe it helped? Of course it helped. I think it kept people employed. When things continued to be bad, I, like probably millions of other people, just assume that you could press, continue, and then things would just keep going. I just don't think it's that easy. So as a one-shot deal, did it help? Yes. I think everyone assumed it would be a permanent deal, and I just don't think that's realistic.
Great. So, Greg, COVID-19 pandemic is teaching us to do more with less, and there are capacity constraints and operational bottlenecks all around us. What would be your advice to entrepreneurs?
My advice to entrepreneurs is work harder than you ever thought you had to work before, but don't beat yourself up if you're only getting 70% or 80% of your efforts realized. And again, that's not something that you would normally tell your employees or your investors or your kids. But right now, you just have to do more and not get anything in return. It's sort of like the only example I can give is it's traditional wisdom that if you want to sell your house, you have to upgrade the bathrooms and you have to upgrade the roof and you have to, keep it well maintained. And you hope that if you put 50,000 US dollars in the house over the past 5 years, that's going to increase the sales price and you're going to get it back on the other end when you go to sell the house, right? Right now, you still should be putting in 50,000, maybe 35, maybe 40, but you might not get it back on the other end. But if you're able to sell the house, mission accomplished.
Great. So Ajay, what is your advice for entrepreneurs and marketers?
I would say there is an amazing answer. Guys, I have met people in last 1 or 2 months, especially in these 2 months, having such brilliant ideas with a small business or even a medium-sized business, with funding, without funding, a lot of great business ideas as well. And I was amazed to see that those people were so enthusiastic and so energetic. Like they were thinking of this as more like an opportunity which is going on, and they were future entrepreneurs, right? They were starting their business right now. So it's almost like building your plane while you are flying it, or flying
it. Yeah.
So that's the motivation. I would say, like, stay motivated and make sure that you are able to keep yourself motivated throughout.
The questions are great, by the way. It's really, thank you for so many of you who are engaged. It's always difficult doing this online when the only two people I'm looking at are on my screen, but I know there are a lot of people out there. The questions are great. Keep them coming, please.
And the social media was flooding with questions, and we have limited time. So that's the end of the webinar. Thank you so much, Greg, for joining us. Thank you so much, Ajay, for your valuable time.